The weather's closing in on us here. It's been snowing a little bit. It's been cold. You know, it's that end of season push. And everybody's doing a really good job.
Parker Schnabel's $69 million gold strike at the historic Widow's Cut will go down in history. But the real story isn't the staggering amount of gold he pulled from the cursed ground. It's the one detail the cameras didn't show.
350?
350.35.
Wow. Booyah.
A hidden clue found thanks to a high-tech laser scan that led him not just to the gold, but into a web of corporate espionage and legal warfare that could cost him everything. This isn't a story about getting rich. It's a story about what happens when you find a treasure so big, everyone wants you gone. The claim no one dared to touch. These claims have names whispered around campfires, attached to tales of financial ruin, broken equipment, and terrible accidents. The Widow's Cut was one of those places. It was a collapsed mine, so famously unforgiving that trying to work it was seen as an impossible mission. But the ground itself was hiding a spectacular secret that technology was about to unlock. A geological nightmare was waiting for anyone who dared to try. This wasn't just about superstition. The place was a certified disaster zone. First off, the entire claim was buried under deep permafrost.
But right now, it's an added cost. And, you know, it's not ready to be sleuthed, but we can make it ready with a bit of ripping.
Now, we're not just talking about frozen dirt. This is ground that has been frozen solid, as hard as concrete for thousands of years. It's an incredibly stable, ancient ice. Any attempt to dig into it carried the constant, terrifying threat of multi-ton chunks of frozen earth and rock suddenly breaking loose and crushing anything or anyone below. The energy released from a permafrost collapse is equivalent to a small explosion. If that wasn't scary enough, there was the water. The constant risk of a catastrophic flood was very real. Even a small amount of meltwater from the sun or a hidden underground spring could turn a digging site into a watery grave in seconds, wiping out millions of dollars of heavy machinery. It was a place where one wrong move could end your season for good. But Parker Schnabel saw something nobody else did. Most miners looked at the Widow's Cut and saw a guaranteed failure. Parker looked at it and saw the biggest opportunity of his life. Truth be told, that's just how he's built. Ever since he was a kid learning from his legendary grandpa, John Schnabel, Parker has been a gambler.
You guys did a job this year. 60, 100, $130, $150, 162.55.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's good stuff.
He's always pushed for bigger goals, more land, and more gold than anyone thought possible. While his rivals like Tony Beats might rely on decades of old-school experience and brute force, Parker combines that grit with a relentless, youthful ambition. He wasn't just trying to have a good season, he was hunting for a 7,000-ounce goal, a number that would cement his status as the undisputed king of the Klondike. Seeing the Widow's Cut, a place feared by all, wasn't a warning sign to him. It was an invitation. He figured if nobody else had the guts to tackle it, then whatever gold was down there was his for the taking.
I expect a bit of calibration problems on this ground of like our process and figuring out the most efficient way of doing things, right? Like I expect those problems.
It was a massive risk, betting his entire operation on this geological nightmare. But Parker was about to prove that the biggest risks come with the biggest rewards. And he had a secret weapon the old-timers could never have dreamed of. Faced with this impossible challenge, Parker decided to fight smart, not just hard. Instead of starting a brute force war against the permafrost with dozers and excavators, he brought in high-tech eyes in the sky. Parker and his crew unleashed a state-of-the-art LiDAR system, a piece of technology that is completely changing the mining game. You see, LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. What it does is almost like magic. A drone shoots millions of laser pulses down at the ground, and by measuring how long it takes for those pulses to bounce back, it creates an incredibly precise three-dimensional map of the terrain. It can see through thick trees and brush, revealing the true shape of the earth beneath. They were looking for a weakness, a hidden path, a secret way into the treasure chest. And then, as the data poured in, they found something that had been lost for decades. But this discovery would lead them to a place no one was prepared to enter. Down the rabbit hole. The breakthrough the lasers provided was stunning. Hidden under a century of tangled wilderness and debris, the LiDAR map revealed a perfectly straight, man-made anomaly, a collapsed vertical shaft. It was a forgotten relic from the original mining operation from the early 1900s, completely invisible to the naked eye.
You see that up there in the corner? Just a big puddle of gold on the edge there. That's really cool. God, seeing this right off the bat, I bet we might find some really nice ones.
Their
I think this one
precise
was mostly
measurement showed
ditches,
it was
wasn't
over
it?
40 meters deep. That's more than 130 feet straight down into the darkness.
If that's a sign of what's
This
to
was
come,
it.
then we're in the right
This
spot.
was their secret
Good
entrance.
part, the cool
Instead
part
of
is
trying
we
to
broke
dig a whole
5,000
new ramp,
ounces for
which
the
would have been
season.
a costly and dangerous battle against the permafrost, they could use this existing shaft. The plan was terrifying but brilliant. The crew got to work, hauling in massive reinforced steel beams to stabilize the crumbling walls of the old shaft. It was slow, nerve-wracking work, with every scrape of the excavator echoing in the dangerous silence. But with Parker's expert crew leading the charge, they managed to build a safe enough pathway down into the heart of the mine. After weeks of frustration, they finally had a direct line to the prize. The moment the crew reached the bottom, they knew they had hit the motherlode. What they found was breathtaking, an untouched, quartz-rich gold vein glittering in the beams of their lights. It was so pure, so pristine, that Parker's on-site geologist said it was the cleanest and richest natural deposit he had ever seen in his entire career. Veins like this are exceptionally rare, formed by superheated water forcing minerals into cracks in the bedrock over millions of years. There was no time to waste. The team knew whispers of a discovery could attract claim jumpers, so they got to work with a frantic, desperate energy. They worked around the clock, fueled by adrenaline and the sight of all that gold.
I think this run was mostly ditches, wasn't it?
Yeah. Ditch and gravel.
If that's a sign of what's to come, then we're in the right spot.
And here's where it gets absolutely wild. In just 72 hours, 3 days of nonstop grueling labor, they managed to extract more than 4,000 ounces of gold. When they did the math, that single cleanup was worth over $10 million. It was a season-saving haul that covered their fuel, wages, and operating costs in one incredible weekend. The gamble had paid off big time, but this incredible score was just a tiny taste of the true treasure. The geologist had even more shocking news. After examining the massive quartz vein, he realized it was far larger than anyone imagined. It didn't just stop at their little chamber, it extended further underground. A lot further. After some quick calculations based on the vein's thickness and projected length, the team figured out that it stretched for another 2 kilometers. That's about 1.25 miles. This is where the numbers get truly insane. Taking into account the incredible richness of the gold they had already pulled out,
That's wild. There's a start. We're on the board, Mitch.
Well, that's an awesome pan.
they ran the numbers on the full 2-kilometer vein. The potential value was staggering. After their initial $10 million haul, the rest of the vein was projected to hold another $59 million in gold, bringing the grand total to an unbelievable $69 million. If they could pull it off, this wouldn't just be a successful season, it would be the single most successful season in the history of Gold Rush. It was the kind of find miners spend their whole lives dreaming about. But you can't keep a $69 million secret in the Klondike for long. When kings go to war, word of Parker's strike at the Widow's Cut got out fast. spreading through the gold fields like wildfire. The ink on the assay reports had barely dried when the trouble began. It started as whispers in the saloons of Dawson City, then escalated to viral posts on social media. The most outrageous claim, that Parker had been secretly arrested for environmental crimes, spread like a contagion. It was a baseless lie, of course, likely cooked up by a jealous rival. But in the hyper-competitive world of gold mining, a lie can do more damage than a broken-down dozer. The rumor forced Parker to spend precious time and money on lawyers and public relations, a new kind of warfare he was not prepared for. Then the attacks became more sophisticated. A shell corporation with ties to a shadowy international consortium filed a lawsuit challenging the legality of his claim. They produced a series of forged, century-old documents that seemed to give them a legitimate claim to the land. Parker, who had always settled disputes with a handshake or a shouting match, now found himself tangled in a web of legal maneuvering that threatened to bleed him dry before he could extract another ounce of gold.
Good part, and the cool part is we broke 5,000 ounces for the season.
His rivals, smelling blood in the water, began to circle. Tony Beets, in particular, seemed to relish Parker's predicament, offering condescending advice in public while quietly fanning the flames of the legal battle behind the scenes. The pressure was starting to crush everyone on Parker's crew. At the beginning of the season, things had been smooth. But now, everything had changed. The easy friendships were gone, replaced by frustration and suspicion. Fights broke out over who deserved the biggest bonus. Some workers, suddenly feeling indispensable, demanded shorter hours or safer conditions, spooked by the mine's reputation. The stress was turning good workers into ticking time bombs. Outside the mine, things weren't much better. A few crew members, not used to the fame and money, started partying hard in town. Their wild behavior, crashing fancy cars and getting into bar fights, quickly made headlines. Parker had worked his whole life to be taken seriously, and now he was watching his crew turn into tabloid gossip. He was spending more time putting out fires than mining gold. But the biggest danger wasn't the lawsuits or the crew, it was growing inside Parker's own mind. The weight of the crown. It's funny when you think about it. For a gold miner, the dream is always about what's under the ground. You fight the frozen dirt, the breakdowns, the weather. You assume that if you can just beat the earth, you've won. But what happens when the real fight begins after you find the gold? That's the part they don't show you on TV. We see the cheering, the gold weigh-ins, the big numbers on the screen, and the happy crew high-fiving. But we don't see the silent, crushing weight that comes with a $69 million discovery. We don't see the sleepless nights or the man who now has to look over his shoulder everywhere he goes. Suddenly, Parker Schnabel wasn't just a miner anymore. He was a target. Every single decision he made felt 10 times riskier. Every quiet conversation among his crew, even just two guys talking by a truck, started to sound like a plot. The gold from the widow's cut had made him a legend, but he wasn't celebrating. He felt like a king under attack, trying to defend his castle from all sides. It's easy for us watching from home to think, what's the big deal? He's rich now. But it's not that simple. This isn't like winning the lottery where the money just shows up in your bank account. That $69 million is still buried in the ground, and now everyone wants a piece of it. Or worse, they want to stop him from ever getting it. Think about it this way. Finding the treasure map was the easy part. Now he has to carry the treasure chest through a forest full of wolves. The thing is, a find this big changes all the rules. Land prices in the area could skyrocket overnight. Other big mining companies might rush in and buy up all the land around his claim, hoping the gold vein extends onto their property. This would box him in, making it impossible for him to expand. The local government, which might have left him alone before, now starts watching his every move. Inspectors show up more often looking for any tiny mistake in his paperwork or a small violation of a rule because a fine this big means huge tax money for them. And then there are the other miners. The envy from his rivals like Tony Beats is one thing, but it's the ambition of others that's truly dangerous. They might try to poach his best workers, offering them more money to leave his crew. They could spread rumors to his fuel suppliers or the companies that rent him equipment, trying to hurt his business. He's not just fighting the ground anymore, he's fighting greed. This was the ultimate test. Parker had proven he could find gold. He had fought through brutal winters and impossible ground to get here. But this was different. This was his chance to build a true legacy, to become a legend like his grandfather, John Schnabel, before him. But it was also a battle for his own survival in a world that had suddenly turned hostile. The dream that had once excited him, the dream of a gold empire, now felt more like a prison. A prison made of legal threats, constant suspicion, and the heavy weight of being the man who hit the jackpot. And deep down, Parker knew one terrifying truth. Finding the treasure was a battle against nature, but keeping it would be a war against people. Parker Schnabel just turned a nightmare into a king's ransom. But is the gold a blessing or a curse that will cost him everything? Let us know below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.